Welcome to podcast 2 of New Tech Startups. Today we have Joshua Leask. He is currently working at the Greater Bank and also has a startup running on the side, Finactly, in the finance space again. So, mate, welcome, Josh.
Thanks a lot.
Mate, thanks for coming along. Obviously, we've talked about this Newy Tech podcast and trying to promote what's going on in Newcastle. So, thanks for coming along. Mate, it'd be good for our viewers and listeners to get a bit of an idea of who you are and what you're doing. So, mate, give us a quick overview of what you're doing at the moment. Probably both from the Greater perspective and Finactly.
Okay. I'll start with the Greater. It's a bit hard, the role to describe. It's not sort of product manager. It's not quite a developer. Production support. So effectively, I'm responsible for a suite of different products within the Greater Bank. So responsible for sort of maintenance, upgrades, production support issues that come up all the time, regulatory changes, and then releasing those into production. So things like when you do a credit card purchase, it'll come through our systems. We sort of maintain the back end. Head office staff have software on their terminals. We maintain that. So that's kind of where I sit at the Greater. And then Finactly is a fintech startup. The idea started August last year. Went through Slingshot Accelerator October till December, and then have been running as a side hustle since December. And so that's in the finance space as well.
Yeah, nice. Well, it's good to sort of rely on that experience because you're Macquarie Bank back in the days as well, right?
Yeah, so I did the typical Newcastle thing. My wife and I moved to Sydney. She worked at a top tier law firm. I worked at Mac Bank. Did that for a few years, earned a lot of money with double income, no kids.
Yeah, you would have been very poor back then.
Yeah, well, that was and I always say when people move to Sydney, it's you need to earn good money. And you need to live in a good suburb if you're going to enjoy it. Because I've had plenty of friends that moved there and hated it.
Yeah.
But we lived in the eastern suburbs, good money, it was awesome.
Yeah, nice, mate. I did the same thing, Newcastle Uni, and then moved to Sydney for work.
Yep.
Earned a decent penny, and then moved back when kids came along. I think that tends to be the story, right?
Yeah, that's our story too.
It's all good, double income down there. There's lots of nice restaurants to go to, places to go, so that's all good.
Yeah, so we actually enjoyed our time there. Mac Bank was quite an interesting place to work. It was probably the most honest place of all things. You wouldn't expect that from Mac Bank.
Yeah.
It was the most honest place I worked at because one of their core values was making money. And they said it. What business actually admits to wanting to make money?
That's nice.
It's crazy that
it's
they
refreshing.
don't. Yeah. They state it, and it's true. Every business wants to return a profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no one else actually says it.
Yeah, it's nice. I guess the banks, mate, they make plenty of money.
Yeah, they. Apart from when the GFC comes and you get maybe redundant, but that happens.
It's a different story.
Yeah,
that's all good, mate. So you've moved back into a sort of a product manager or senior software dev manager. Yeah. Mate, I imagine when you moved to Sydney, though, those sort of opportunities probably didn't exist around Newcastle back then. Mate, how do you think the growth of Newcastle sort of, brought about more opportunities for people like yourself?
Well, yeah, I guess at the time I didn't really have an eye on what the market was doing in Newcastle because we were looking at Sydney. So I'm not sure really what it was back then. But in the last few years, I've noticed we've been back more than 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in the last 3 years or so, Newcastle, the tech scene has really taken off.
Yeah.
There isn't a shop in town now that isn't trying to hire devs. There's startups, starting up. Seems like every month.
Yeah.
So the opportunities now is better than I've ever seen, and that's, I guess my memory of the last 15 years.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree. I think there's a strong startup community building. And I think not only startup community, but I think just the overall technology community, as in more and more technology people being employed around Newcastle, and not even in traditional tech companies, but traditional companies who are building out their technology teams. I think that's where the growth is coming.
Well, and everyone's doing the digital transformation.
Oh, yeah.
So as much as I hate, the wank words and whatnot, it is actually driving a lot of tech change and jobs and
No,
and
mate, I
different
completely agree.
businesses.
I think digital transformation, yeah, you can put a tagline, you can put whatever you like on it, but mate, digital transformation, there's so many traditional businesses in Newcastle, without a form of a digital transformation, they're going to become obsolete within a number of years. So I
Yeah.
think it's really smart. We've started to see it over the last couple of years, and I think we'll probably see more of it in the next 5 years. And I think there's some really solid talent around Newcastle to sort of help transition that. Plus, you can also drag people back from Sydney, like people like yourself who've gone away for an opportunity, want to grow a family, and move back to Newcastle for that. And the opportunities are starting to sort of present themselves. So I think it's a good thing for Newcastle, and it's presenting more opportunities for people like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I guess it's the same as any wank. Like, as long as you look at what's behind it, and it's driving value, then then it's good, sort of thing. As long as it's not a hollow catchphrase.
Yeah, cool. Mate, well, let's continue down that Newcastle route. So, mate, you're obviously coming at life and technology from a dev perspective. Mate, what's your opinion on the current sort of dev market, either maybe at the Greater or what you're building with Finactly? Do you think, I think quite traditionally people in Newcastle were Microsoft-centric on a .NET stack, which is Newcastle to a T. Mate, where do you think, I think there's a lot of growth and sort of forward-thinking movement going on. Mate, what's your perspective from a development perspective in and around Newcastle?
So there is still, I guess, there's still a traditional .NET kind of focus around town. Greater is one of the few, like one of the small, players, number of players that are actually in Java.
Yeah.
But neither of them I see is where the growth is. So the growth is at the moment in basically JavaScript languages like Angular and React, and Node.js backends. There's heaps of growth. There's good community in town that meet up every month, and that's where I guess a lot of local tech growth is. And there's opportunities, and people need front end developers, and everything now is on the web, and it's effectively killed off my development history has been in actually Windows development in .NET. So WinForms, then WPF, but JavaScript's totally killed it. Like, I wouldn't develop a Windows app now; it would be just web. And the technology has come to the point now where it's good enough and it's easy enough now that you can actually do smart, good business apps on the web, and that's where there's a lot of movement.
Yeah, man, I agree. Mate, you touched on there's a community around Newcastle. Dig into that for us for a little bit, because I think it's quite interesting. I think for people around Newcastle that aren't aware of that, but also maybe people outside of Newcastle who are thinking, hey, I might move back to Newcastle. I wonder what that community is like. Do we have the skills around town? Are there other people that I could have intelligent conversations with in the dev space who are actually living in the current year and working with new technologies? Touch on, go into a little bit of detail on what the community is like around that.
So the JavaScript, so on that Meetup website, there's a JavaScript group that meets up once a month down I don't know how to say, INNX, INNX, which is another co-working space. So that's beer, pizza, and one or two talks. Very casual, very friendly mob, and it's an interesting mix between kind of designers, artistic types, and people like myself, science engineering types. So that's really nice to sort of talk to all sorts of different people. And there's also other ones like Newcastle Coders Group and different groups around town. The IoT meet, there's an IoT meet at the Stag and Hunter Hotel. That's a good one. Interestingly, it's a lot of old engineers, which is totally not what I expected when I first went. That's been going a bit over a year. But how it works out is that it's all the old guys that do mining and remote sensor work and IoT before it was IoT. That's kind of most of the people there. And then you've got an interesting mix where you've got very young kind of uni students and graduates at that meet as well. So it's really cool to sort of see this different spectrum.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree. I think there's a lot of value to be to be taken from those guys that have been around the industry for a long time. Mate, it's no different. I guess obviously I'm in the recruitment game, so helping build teams, right, and looking at sort of how different teams evolve and how you can add complementary pieces. And I think if you can get some people that know the industry, or know the older technologies, but you know really solid principles around how things should work, and you can partner them up with somebody that's on pace with the newer technologies and how to actually execute on that.
Yeah.
You've got a really strong team there, right? I think a lot of people sort of overlook the older community, or the people that have been around for a while, because hey, one too many grey hairs. But if you can look past the grey hairs, which I'm getting a few more of them these days, if you can look past that, there's a lot of experience and knowledge there.
Well, and especially at places like the Greater and the Perm in town. At the Greater, we've got it's like a half a dozen sort of guys that have been around 20, 30 years with domain knowledge that I'll never expect to get. But like, even though they're using the older technology, the domain knowledge is so valuable that you just can't go past it. You ask them a question about a certain interest rate calc or certain account type with multiple people and beneficiaries and all the rest of it, and they can answer it straight off the top of the head, where you won't get that in someone that's 5-10 years out of uni. So it's really good to sort of have that mix.
Yeah, I completely agree. Still on the Newcastle route then, and what do you think are sort of some of the, I think we both agree that Newcastle's growing from a tech perspective. It's still not anywhere near one of the capital cities, but what do you think would be sort of some of the advantages of being in and around Newcastle from a tech professional perspective?
Well, before I get onto the tech benefits, I guess the lifestyle benefits is why we move back from Sydney to Newcastle. In Sydney, I lived 9 kilometres to work, and it took me 50 minutes. Here, I live 19 kilometres, and it takes me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's a huge difference. And, big, nice leafy suburb. When we moved, and this was before the price boom in Sydney, and we could have bought a crappy 2-bedroom unit in the eastern suburbs. Or now we've got like a big size, 2-bedroom house in nice suburb, all the rest of it, the same money. And the salaries, they can be a bit lower, but it certainly makes up for it in terms of what you can get. And the lifestyle here, the beaches, the lake. I was out on the lake last weekend for Float Your Boat.
Yeah.
That was good. And just stuff like that. And Newcastle's a great place to live. But in terms of tech, it's interesting because we don't have as many big players. We have quite a few small players. But the opportunities, and the same with my wife-in-law, you get to be, I don't know how to put it nicely, you get to be a bigger fish in a smaller bowl.
Yeah.
In Sydney, you can easily get swallowed up. You can be a shit kicker for 30 years and never go anywhere. Newcastle is a bit better in terms of progress and having your career go forward. It seems a lot easier.
Mate, I completely agree. I think there's a big fish, small pond, but I also think for people probably like yourself who are prepared to sort of, go to the meetups, and I know you just, finished your MBA recently.
It's actually 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
I know. It seems like a long...
Not recently.
Yeah. I ran into someone from my MBA the other day, and I couldn't believe it. It was, over 10 years ago now.
Yeah, right. Well, let's say somebody that's actually gone ahead and done their MBA, right? Yeah. Somebody that's actually going to invest in themselves and invest on sort of moving forward. You're obviously playing, side hustle with Finactly as well. So, a guy that's actually looking at new technologies, looking at, progressing yourself. I think there's opportunities for guys like yourself that are, going to continue to sort of investing in themselves and moving forward. Yeah. I think those opportunities probably present themselves in Newcastle quicker than you might get in Sydney.
Yeah, it's and the other side, and the other reason for that is networking. You get to know most people, a lot of people around town, and it's not what you know, it's who you know a lot of the time. So that really helps in Newcastle. You just can't know everyone at the sort of head of all the companies in Sydney. Yeah. In Newcastle, you can go to meet. You can, if you're active with the council and business chambers and whatnot, you can actually meet all the bigwigs from all the companies here and make connections.
I completely agree. Mate, let's turn it back then a little while. Mate, why did you get into tech to start with? Why? Mate, everyone's got their different reasons, but mate, why technology for you?
Well, I laughed when I read your post last week about Andre Agassi,
Oh yeah.
because that's me.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm the reason why I chose tech is it was before I started before the .com bubble burst.
Yeah.
So like there was millions of millionaires coming out, everywhere. Tech was taking off. I thought, well, this is a good career move.
Yeah.
I was good with computers. I didn't actually study computers in 11 and 12 because I found them boring.
Yeah.
Because like everything they were doing, I sort of, I was happy, I could do. So I didn't study it. So it came about that I was quite decent at programming, computers in general, but not necessarily passionate about coding. So I picked engineering at uni, so I did engineering, which was good. I got a good breadth of computer engineering, electrical engineering, maths, science. No, not science, but all the sort of different fields around engineering. But yeah, and it's kind of paid. It's kind of good and bad because when you're good at a job, it's very easy and it's not particularly stressful, and it can pay for you, and has for years paid for my pet projects at home, like my rally cars and other toys that I've got. But it took me until so I did my MBA 10 years ago, 2007, 2008. It really took me until then to work out, I guess, more what I was more passionate about, which is mixing the technology and business, which was and finance. So that's where I got an interest in finance as well. So I did the MBA and then I went to MacBank.
Yeah.
So that's when I guess I found more of a passion for software development, IT, business.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting. I think everyone's got a different story, right?
Yeah.
Next question then, mate. In and around education, you're a guy that's obviously done a bachelor's degree and then gone and done an MBA.
Yep.
I think different people have different ways about approaching their technology careers. And what's your thoughts on a degree as a necessity, or an MBA, obviously? Let's go with degree then as a necessity. Do you think it's a necessity to be a quality tech professional?
Short answer, no. In terms of being a quality tech professional, but yes, to get hired. There's still the old world thinking, and every HR person sort of puts it on the ads, minimum comp sci or equivalent on their ads. And it's kind of like the minimum bar that they set. You can be the best coder in the world and you still won't get through HR.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, and hopefully it'll change. And with the MBA, there's a lot of talk I hear recently about startup is the new MBA, and MBAs are old school and irrelevant and all of that, which I don't agree. I've obviously done both. I've founded a startup and I've got an MBA, so I guess I've got a good insight onto both of them. The MBA itself gives really good fundamentals. You can do balance sheets, ROI calcs, marketing, HR strategy, all the things that drive businesses, and the startup is quite opposite. You don't get breadth, you don't learn all the fundamentals. You put your head down and run as hard as you can, trying to make sales and build products and build relationships. So I think they're complementary, not one replacing the other. And in terms of my continued education, I was actually looking at masters recently, investigating possibilities for masters of data science, that sort of route.
Yeah.
But to the point now where online courses, like I'm doing a Udemy course, there's Coursera, there's a few others, where you can actually now just do an online course and get the technical proficiency you need
without a certification.
Without a certificate from the university.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. I think it still is there. I think there are more hiring managers starting to not believe it is the be all and end all, but it is still. You'd want to be pretty hot, I think, to not have a degree and to be able to walk into a job. I think I'm probably similar to you. I don't think it is the be all and end all, but it does teach some really solid fundamentals.
Yeah, and it's the same with the software engineering degree as the MBA. We learnt more of the fundamentals around object-oriented coding and relational databases without actually learning very useful tech like programming skills. Everything was in an ideal environment.
Yeah.
And I remember, geez, it must have been a few months after I started my first job, I really stuck my foot in it. With there was an old developer next to me, and there was this bit of code that didn't make sense. Why the hell would you do this? This just isn't right. And of course, there's always a reason why these things aren't ideal. And coming from the uni, you think everything should be ideal. Everything's a clean environment. There's no external factors involved. So I just sort of, brash young fella, saying, "Oh, what's this shit?" And it was the guy next to me that had written it, and he called me on it.
Yeah.
And so I learned a valuable lesson there that the real world's not sanitized and clean, and there is always a reason for these things. People don't just develop shit code, because they like doing it. Like, there's always a reason.
Man, I think real world experience is massive, right? Like that was my experience, right? Obviously not in a computer science degree, but I think you learn some fundamentals, but I think you learn more in the first 3 months out of uni than you do in a 3-year degree type thing.
Yeah.
That real world experience is it's an eye-opening experience, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think you're probably better placed than most people to actually speak about the difference between an MBA and the startup, having done both yourselves. Mate, from a startup experience then, what's been your biggest learnings in and around that?
I don't actually know what the biggest learning is. I've, I guess, gained more of an appreciation of what can be done with minimal resources, where for the most part of my career, I've been in large corporates with a lot of resources, and the startup is the polar opposite. You've basically got nothing, and you have to try and create something out of nothing, especially if you're bootstrapping like we are. So there's lessons there, but it's hard to say. It's more for me, everyone says a startup's hard, but you don't realize how hard until you actually have to do it, and you work your butt off for, it's 9 months now, and it's difficult. So that's kind of, every side project I've ever had has never sort of been a startup. So it's an eye-opening experience, and I guess you appreciate more now what people go through when they create a company from scratch that's worth millions or billions of dollars. That it's not easy.
It's definitely not.
Yes.
Everyone would be doing it if it was that easy, right?
But that's what you think. Like when you're at school or uni, you see all these role models like Musk and Branson and all these billionaires, and it looks easy, and you think, oh gee, I can do that. I'll be the next billionaire. It turns out it's not that easy.
No, there's something to be said for those guys and the successes they've had. There's probably a tiny element of luck in it along the way, and you need that, right? But there's a hell of a lot of hard work. That's cool, mate. So in and around, or you can go from a startup perspective or a education perspective. If you had to, turn back the clock and give some advice to yourself back in the days, what would be sort of some key learnings that you would have said to yourself, back when you were, let's say, 20, or maybe another person that's 20 right now, getting into technology, has an interest in and around development? Now, what would advice for those guys be?
It probably would be from a startup perspective and an opportunity perspective. I've been through a few cycles now of, like, my first job I was made redundant, and these sort of things come up, and you go up and down, but there's always opportunities like popping up the head, and as long as you're keeping an eye out for them, they're there. For me, it was probably a symptom more of my upbringing. I got brought up in a working middle class family where you work hard, you go to uni, you get a good job, you work hard, you make money. Mentality where there was never kind of an entrepreneurial kind of I had no idea about the whole thing. So there were certainly opportunities that went past me that I didn't even know were opportunities, which is really interesting looking back now. Like my resume was online in 1997, and in 1997 or 98, I developed a a website to help my parents sell their house. And these are the years before Seek and realestate.com.au. And I had other people wanting me to build real estate sales websites for them, but that wasn't a job.
What could have been?
Yeah,
what
it's
could
really
have been?
interesting, like looking back at that now. And so I guess that was probably be my advice to myself is, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a great example of a book that kind of highlights the difference between the working middle class kind of upbringing where education is king to the other side of the fence where experience and is king kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and speaking on that, then let's go into the books.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's formal education. Then there's courses you can do. You can probably do certifications, for days and days and months and years.
Yeah.
Then there's just other education in which meetups and things like that you go do to sort of continue to grow and evolve as a person, as a professional. From an education perspective outside of that, informal, let's say books or audiobooks or podcasts. Any books that you've read or podcasts that you listen to frequently that you highly rate or would recommend to others?
I don't have a lot of time for reading, so probably the most recent book that I did read was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
I think Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
It's about 100 years old. It's
a
very old
I've
book.
read that.
Yeah, but still today it's just as relevant as it was back then. It's really insightful as to and
that's a tough read.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I won't go into the details on it.
Mate, you can go. Feel free if you like. Mate, let's go biggest insights out of that then.
It's not empathy so much as people like to think about themselves a lot and what benefits them. So if you want someone to do something for you, they're not going to do it if it's just for you.
Yeah.
There has to be something for them, and so they'll be thinking about what's in it for them, and that's kind of what you focus on. Like you focus on, the other person, what can they get out of it, rather than what I can get out of it,
and delivering value, right?
Yeah. And really interesting things like using their name.
Yeah.
Like the most important name in the world is your own. Simple sentence means a lot when you put it into practice. The two best bits of advice I got about getting promoted. Firstly, make yourself redundant. Make yourself replaceable. It's a scary thing, but if you can't be replaced, then you can't be promoted. And the second one is make your boss's life easy. So basically do whatever will make his job easier and make him look better. And as soon as you do that, then you're the golden child.
Yeah.
Your boss loves you, and that's what you need. You need people at a higher level, appreciating what you do, because if you just sit back in the corner and cut the best code ever, no one's going to notice and no one's going to care, and they'll keep you in that corner because that's where they need you.
Yeah, exactly. And you're irreplaceable, right? If you're banging out that really high quality code, no one else knows how to do it.
Yep.
Trying to find somebody to replace that role to move you up is, extremely hard.
Yeah. So, in terms of books, education, that sort of thing, I don't have time to read books. I don't have time to do anything these days. I don't read the paper. I don't watch news, but I do have 20 minutes each way in the car. So I'm now listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
So the podcasts, I've listened to a few, but the one I'm listening to now I'm really enjoying is Super Data Science.
Yeah.
I think it's a guy, ex-Russian guy out of Queensland, I think he is. Yeah, very good. It just effectively gets people from the spectrum of data science around the world and interviews them about their career, and not too technical, but technical enough that it's interesting. So I'm finding that enjoyable.
Yeah, especially if it's short enough that you can knock over in that that short commute. I think that a lot of people are starting to find value in that, right? That's where podcasting is starting to grow.
Yep.
That's interesting. So that's books, podcasts. Hey, is there anyone that you follow online, whether it be Twitter or somewhere else, that you think's providing really good information that other people get value out of following?
I have no socials except for LinkedIn. All my potential customers for Finactly are at LinkedIn. And that's a really great marketing avenue for me because I've connected with CEOs and executives from all sorts of background, like all my customers, effectively on LinkedIn, and I hear all sorts of news, especially industry news, through that because people share. Just today was announced another digital bank starting in Australia, in Sydney.
I did read that in the paper today. And it'll actually compete with the banks, right?
Yes, kind of. Everyone has grand plans to compete with the big four. Very unlikely that they're going to steal much market share, but everyone dreams.
Yeah, well, they're not letting them into the market willy-nilly, right? Like they're protecting themselves.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. So, mate, we've touched on your education, where you're actually growing from a outside of pure formal education perspective, books, podcasts. Mate, is there anything else that you would sort of provide as insights or advice to other people sort of trying to grow their financial or their technology career, especially in that sort of financial space?
It definitely helps to keep up to date. Like I'm doing a Udemy course at the moment, which is on machine learning. It's the A to Z of machine learning. It's actually took me. I didn't even realize it when I signed up. It's actually this super data science guy. So it's his course. And it's quite comprehensive. But I'm also learning Python, the programming language, through that course as well. And I guess keeping abreast of what technology is progressing, like JavaScript. I've written a program in Angular 2 and Finactly is React. So I've sort of deliberately kept up to date in terms of the front end development as well. So like I said, I'm not a passionate coder. It's not what I live and breathe for, but I like to be across everything. I sort of like to know the full suite and be able to pick it up and code, if that's what's needed.
Yeah, cool. Mate, is there anything that you use either from a technical perspective, an app perspective, to be obviously running a side hustle and you're running a full-time role, which you're obviously succeeding in? Mate, is there anything that you use from a productivity perspective to keep yourself on target or to sort of help be productive?
So I use the Atlassian suite, both at work and my side hustle, and it's quite cost effective for a startup to have the Jira and the Confluence and Bitbucket all there, very easy. The cloud platforms are using Azure. That's great because I can just go home, cut out some code, push it to the cloud, and it's deployed there. It's working for the next day. In terms of productivity, that's probably it, and just random notes on my phone. So when I do, and you do think of random things all the time, so you just jot down a note and you can come back to it.
Mate, from the Atlassian perspective, I think there'd be quite a few people that obviously Atlassian's got a hell of a lot of news in and around Australia because of their successes. Mate, if somebody hasn't used Atlassian before and let's say they're starting a bit of a side hustle, or they're thinking they're in an internal role at the moment within a bigger organisation, and they're looking at all around, their productivity and actually putting some more formal processes in place, and they're looking at Atlassian. Mate, what's some advice you give to people like that, or what's your experiences learning Atlassian?
So the biggest productivity tool is Jira, which is the issue tracking software. They have, as software development goes, there's stages of the life cycle, which traditionally has been kind of a waterfall approach. Now it's more iterative and everyone wants to do agile development. So it helps. It has inbuilt workflows in this tool. So you'll create a ticket, and this is what I'll do. I'll take it out of my notes on my phone. I'll go home. I'll add a Jira item like a to-do item. It'll go onto my backlog, and I'll order them based on priority. So when I do get enough time to start, I'll just pull one off the list, do it, complete it, and it's very effective for coordinating work too. So I've had Newcastle Uni graduates working with me, both software engineers, and it's really great because anyone can just log onto the website, pull mark a task down against yourself in development, and everyone knows that you're working on that.
Yeah.
And the same for checking code. You're checking code against that particular item into Atlassian's source repository, so they all link up. And so that's I think it was Bitbucket, and then Confluent is the document kind of repository type system where like a new version of SharePoint where and that also you can also link that up with your source code and your tickets, and so they're quite well integrated. But Jira is the main one.
Yeah. So if you're, let's say, in a corporate at the moment, you're having some issues, let's say with SharePoint, you're having some issues in and around, the processes around development. Would you recommend Atlassian for people to jump on board or really explore that, and how should they go about doing that?
Atlassian has got a really good sales model, and this is why they've done so well in the software developer kind of space. And they are spreading out now and with Agile spreading it across different business units rather than just IT, Atlassian's also spreading out, where their pricing model is basically, I don't know if it's free or very low cost for 10 users. So 1 to 10 users might be a couple of bucks a month or free, I can't remember. And then saying up to 25 users is quite cheap. And then once you get other, then the price just skyrockets. So what they do is they'll get, so you can try it basically for free, and it's great if you're in a small team. If you have a team of 5 people, you can use it for next to nothing, and it's really effective. So that's how Atlassian get their foot in the door. They do that, and then it proves valuable, and then it kind of spreads because it's worth it. And so it's very easy to get on, low cost, and quite easy to use.
Awesome. Mate, you mentioned Agile a couple of times.
Yeah.
Agile in Newcastle. I think there are many people claiming to be running an Agile environment in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And the amount of people claiming to be running an Agile environment and the amount of people actually running an Agile environment are two different numbers. And what's your opinion on running true Agile? Is it being run effectively? Let's say at the grader, and maybe outside of the grader?
Yeah, so I first used Agile and Scrum methodology back in 2004, so quite a few years ago now. And that was probably the only time I've seen it done to the book, like to actually, you go to your meetings, people wear certain hats in your Scrum meetings and whatnot. These days, people call it Agile, but effectively it's kind of more like 2-week waterfall sprints, 2-week waterfall projects. And so it's effectively a watered down Agile approach that people use now. So they've effectively just shortened the life cycle. I don't actually it's better than it was, better than like the traditional approach of software doing, but things have moved on now from Agile. And this is one of the things that I've learned with the startup, is you'll see it lean startup, lean methodologies, where it's a different mindset than Agile, and I've seen it firsthand in the startup world. It delivers way more result than Agile methodologies. So it all focuses on delivering as much as you can with as little as you can. So you'll get minimal people. You hit the work as hard as you can, and you'll deliver as most value as you can, as short as you can. So you'll hit the big ticket items first that they're going to deliver the most value. And that's kind of the lean methodology, which I much prefer these days than Agile. And it's interesting because Agile now, everyone's got like having a go at it. I think it was NAB, ANZ, one of them. They were saying now they're going to run 100 or 150 Agile teams and like across the whole business and things like that. So it's spreading, and it's probably better than what they were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's better options now.
Yeah, and I agree, mate. I think, it's as long as it's a step in the right direction. Implementing a true Agile environment is a big shift for people that are running traditional waterfall. So I think it's maybe a step too far for a lot of people, but as long as you can take a step in that right direction, there's probably a lot of benefit to be gained.
And I find with a lot of engineering processes, and Agile is no different, is you don't actually want to do it letter for letter to the rule book, because then the process becomes onerous. You want to understand what the whole process is, and then pick out what's valuable, what's going to deliver the most value to you, and do that rather than get an agile coach in and smack you on the back of the hand if you if you stand up for more than 5 minutes, or there's a bit of common sense that goes a long way.
Common sense does go a long way, and it's not overly common, unfortunately.
Yeah, I find that too.
It's all good. Mate, I think that gives us pretty good insight in sort of what you're up to at the moment. Mate, what's the next steps for Finactly?
So Finactly at the moment is trialling a call center app at Greater Bank. So that's out in the wild now and delivering value. So we'll be running for another month and collecting metrics on how much time and money it's saved to the bank, and then using that in our marketing going forward to push into other banks and at the moment into call centers.
Nice, mate. That's a pretty exciting future.
Yeah.
So, mate, is it finactly.com?
Yes, it is, yep.
Finactly.com.
And we've got a new website coming very shortly.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Mate, you mentioned you're not on the socials. Find you on LinkedIn, anywhere
LinkedIn.
else?
Literally that's it.
LinkedIn?
Yeah? Yep.
Nice. So if people wanted to get in touch, hit you up through there.
Yep, that's right.
It'd be quite interesting. So if you've got an interest in and around that, obviously software development in and around Newcastle, or in particularly the finance space, you'd be open to have a conversation?
Yeah, and just recently I've had some conversations around data science locally. So there's a few, it's a growing field, and there's a few local tech people starting to get interested in data science and machine learning and deep learning and all the really, all the meat behind the AI kind of catchphrase. So that's cool. And we'll see a bit more of that locally too. So
cool, man. Mate, let's finish on that then. What is your opinion in around? Obviously, the future of technology is changing. We're talking, there's blockchain, there's AI, there's machine learning, yada yada yada, and could go on for days on the different, the different progress. Mate, what's your opinion on either current levels of knowledge or what's going on around Newcastle?
I think there's a lot of really smart people around Newcastle that are kind of, I guess, they're kind of sitting on the sidelines at the moment, there's also a growing startup scene, and we're seeing more and more people sort of taking an interest in it. So it's very exciting times to be in Newcastle and watch. And the council are on board, the uni are on board. There's other groups that are on board, and everyone's sort of starting to come together to build this sort of ecosystem, and a lot of support for startups locally. So I think that's really exciting and really good to see locally.
I agree, man. And that's what builds a community, right? Having those big players on board. And I think Newcastle is very lucky to obviously have a council that's going to back it, but also the university. The university has a lot of resources, both from a personnel perspective, from a monetary perspective, and having that sort of education behind the local community is massively beneficial.
Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Well, mate, thanks for coming on Newy Tech People, the podcast, and hopefully to see some more success for Finactly going forward and your role growing within the greater.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.